What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Morgue podcast, where we talk about the whiskey we're drinking, the horror we're watching, or in today's case, what we're reading. I'm your host, Mike, and tonight I'm joined by Richard T. Wilson of Mad Shelley Comics.
Hey,
He's a writer, creator of the series Halloween Girl, which we're going to talk about here. We're going to discuss his journey a little bit, how he moved from film into comics, and of course, the latest release here, the Halloween Girl Book 3, Gods and Monsters. Richard, how are you?
great. Thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate the invitation.
No, ever since I saw the comic pop up, I knew I had to get you on here, and it's fitting you're
Oh,
wearing the Rue
thanks.
Morgue shirt because
Yes,
that's both
absolutely.
both our
Greatest
ties
magazine
to
in the
Rue Morgue.
world. Yes,
Yeah,
love it.
there we go. You heard it here. It really is. And
It
I'm a
really
little bit
is, though.
biased because I work with them, but I do think they're all encapsulating in terms of like what horror means in terms of community, audio, text, film.
Oh,
I feel like they
totally. And
just
I
cover
mean,
it all.
it's like nobody has the breadth of they cover the entire spectrum. And I have to say, I always say this, but anyone who's got Let's Scare Jessica to Death on the cover of their
Yeah.
magazine, that's what sold me, buddy. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that freaking movie and nobody cares. So
Yeah.
that was like,
It
thank you,
it is a
my
great movie,
people.
but that's where I say Rue Morgue, like even in terms of giving you some spotlight, they really are
Yeah,
looking
they've been
for
terrific.
emerging artists, new stuff, because it's easy to grab whatever's hot at the moment and say, well, here's this graphic novel
Right,
by, say, famous writer who's already sold millions of copies.
right,
It's a grab, like you kind of know what to expect. But I've like before I even started working with them, I enjoyed it for that reason that I would learn
right.
that I'd be like, oh, what's this record that came out by this band or this comic that
Yeah,
was released?
yeah. And I love the history stuff too in there.
Yeah.
Just the historical, the weird historical stuff. I love all that. And I love how they just dig into like these ancient, no one's heard of except for people who are almost dead like me, TV movies from the 70s. You know what I mean? Oh man,
Yeah.
that totally warped me as a kid. So I love seeing people talk about these movies. It's like I forgot about some of them, and I'm like, yeah, I remember that. So I was scared shitless.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they were, horror, I should say, demonology and witches were a big thing in the 70s TV movie of the week when I
yeah.
was a kid. So yeah, we're all really warped. We're a bunch of warped old people. So
Yeah, we're not sure if it's nostalgia or PTSD quite yet.
oh, it's definitely PTSD. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had people yell at me saying, "You told me to watch this freaking movie, and it's not even that scary." I said, "Man, I was 5 when I saw it. Okay, cut me a
Yeah.
break." It was like Crowhaven Farm, and we have a running joke, me and this guy John, about it all the time. He goes, "What the hell was that?" I said, "You don't understand, man. They were everywhere back then, and it was creepy. Everywhere you look, there was. I mean, Exorcist, Omen, and then
Yeah.
all the TV movies.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
uh
scary
it's nice. And
time.
I think they do a good job at
Yeah, they
digging into
do.
the past, getting to know them behind the scenes. They're academics, they're historian buffs. Like they really, like you said, dive into history and look at also what's emerging. So Rue Morgue was a big connection. You also mentioned you liked whiskey. Unfortunately, you
Oh
can't
yes,
have a drink with me today.
right.
But you did kind of make a request. You said that, Angel's Envy is your favorite whiskey. So
Yes.
I made sure I had that on hand here.
Oh, so nice to see that because because I have to like live vicariously through you because of what happened to me with the health reasons. I can't eat stuff, I can't drink stuff, and but I'm like I that up to my near death experience last. I mean, truly, man, getting old, right?
Yeah.
And I don't blame it on. By the way, I don't blame it on whiskey. I truly blame it on. I have this theory that number one, they had me on like cholesterol stuff from the time I was like 30. I was talking like your age or something, right?
Yeah.
I swear to God, that's the reason the kidneys just went whoop,
Yeah.
because,
Well,
and so as a result, I've only got one now, and I almost had and I thought, and at the same time, there was an embolism in the chest, so I had it coming from all ends, and I was like, I'm fine, I just really didn't want to tell anybody how sick I felt, but I've been
yeah.
sick for years, and my wife, had it, and she said, "All right, we're calling the ambulance." It's a good thing she did because I would have been dead. So I was that I didn't know how bad I was. So, but that's why I can't partake. But I love watching your show because I get to see all this great whiskey and remember.
Yeah.
So I'm
Well,
living
they're
through
going
you
to take
today,
two
Mike.
things from this. The first thing is that I'm going to be less stubborn and listen to my body when needed, or at least my wife when she tells me to go to the
Yeah,
doctor.
yeah.
And the other part is, yeah, I'm going to have a pour for the both of us.
Yes.
Now I have to ask you, Angel's Envy was just one that you enjoyed by taste because I right away kind of saw a pairing happening here as I uncork. So was it just one that you enjoyed drinking or
Just
in the
one that I
past?
really enjoyed. It was like, it was my daughter's boss got me into it. He was a big fan, is a big fan of Angel's Envy, and she had recommended it a couple years back. She goes, blah blah loves it. And I said, okay, well let me try. We were like visiting her. She works in the entertainment industry, and we were on one of her visited her on one of her shoots, and she said, yeah, he loves this. And so I tried it. I was like, wow, this is heaven. I'm not to like, be weird, but I'm just,
Yeah.
but to the point where I got a bottle even for Christmas that year. So I was just, so yeah, it kind of became, and I thought, of course, Angel's Envy. I mean, it kind of goes with the series.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
You
what
know,
right away came to mind in terms of like because that's how my brain operates
yeah,
naturally in terms of pairings. But just in terms of like Charlotte and Poe, and we'll get into
yeah,
this later on, but in terms of being like they're even referred to as angels in book three,
yeah.
and kind of like being like the guardians. So I
Yeah,
thought,
they
yeah, I
definitely
wasn't
are
sure if
that.
like it was
Yeah.
just one that you enjoyed or it came to mind that you've had it and it was like already a natural
It
pairing.
was both when she said it, I said, "Oh, really?" Because I said that's interesting, and I had it, and I just happened to love it at the same time, and I thought, boy, this is funny, and I think my wife made the comment like, "Hey, of course, this is the perfect
Yeah,
whiskey for you."
yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So
The
I think we
aesthetic
got tried that in
naturally.
a barbecue place in North Carolina or whatever was the first time I had it.
Yeah. And when you see this on the shelf, you're like,
It's a
you're gonna
beautiful model. I
gravitate
mean, like
towards it.
turn. I
Yeah.
mean, turn around turn around and show them the angel wings on the back, which is hard. Yeah, you could see it.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's a beautiful bottle.
Yeah. The shape,
Beautiful
it's
whiskey. It's a
elegant.
beautiful bottle, and
And what's cool is like the further I went deeper into whiskey, I realized that like because at the time I just saw, bourbon finished in port barrels.
yeah,
And they were really kind of like the pioneers in terms of like because like Scotch we know has been finished in plethora of different barrels,
right.
but bourbon's always been like straight bourbon whiskey. So when they started doing this, I think it was like 2014, 15, and they started saying, "Hey,
I
we're
didn't
going to
realize it
finish
was
in port
that
barrels."
recent. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's fairly recent. And then all of a sudden there was a wave of like finished whiskeys and people wanting to like basically borrow from like the Scotch world and start
Right.
finishing and using finishing casks. So yeah, they were kind of like spearheading that and almost got a lot of slack for it at first. But I mean, you package it in that bottle, it
Oh
tastes
my
great.
gosh.
It's I
The
always say it's
bottle's
like a nice like
art.
dessert pour for me. It's like this like nice
Yeah.
dessert
Yeah. I
bourbon.
mean, and when whiskey started to make a comeback, I mean, this is now been a while. So, but this is like in the very beginning. I remember being out with friends and all the local restaurants were like featuring their own. It was all new. It was all like a big. It was all starting to become a thing at the time. This is going back. I mean, whiskey kind of came back. It's been,
Mm,
I don't know, 10 years now that it's been like this thing, and it was great to just go to the different places around here. I live in the Philly area, South
okay.
Jersey, Philly. And it was great to go to the restaurants and say, hey, here's a local distillery and all that kind of stuff. And I had some of the best I've ever had in my life. I wish I could
Yeah.
remember what the hell they were. But but seriously, I've had some of the best whiskey that's been local. Uh, I mean, like, clear, everything else, just like, I mean, it was
Yeah.
beautiful. Anyway,
Yeah.
it kills me. I can't, but it's been a couple different restaurants, one in Philly and one here in our area that I love, my favorite place. You would love it, Mike. Cake and Kitchen.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna note that because
Egg
I've
and
been down in the
Kitchen,
area a
and
few times.
yeah, it's terrific. A little place, and everybody loves it. It's my favorite restaurant, but
Yeah. The good thing I'll
lots of
leave you
great
with
distilleries, local stuff there.
with your forced retirement in drinking is that you probably got a
Yeah,
lot of great stuff you wouldn't be able to have these days just because the hype has grown so much that bottles that are phenomenal that used to sit in restaurants or on shelves that were like affordable pours have
yeah.
now like skyrocketed and been romanticized and
Oh, well, that's
um
true. I mean,
yeah, so
that's absolutely true. I mean, the one thing I can drink now that helps to, because helps me because I used to look, it would be late at night and I would have read a book, you
Yeah.
know, and is the I don't know whether you've heard of it. It's THC infused nowadays.
Yeah.
I tried Willie Nelson's stuff and that was okay too, but man, Willie was charging a whole lot of money. Um,
Yeah.
so I tried nowadays, and not that it's cheap or anything, but nothing is. That's the thing. It's just like everything is. You go in, and I love it. It actually, it if my mind is racing at night instead of having because I can't have a whiskey,
Yeah.
I will have a nowadays, and it will totally different experience.
Yeah. Well, funny
But
enough, you mentioned that because like a lot of like in the inner community of like where the market's going, because the bubble, they many would say the bubble of in whiskey burst in the last year or two. And it's not to say it's not strong still, but just like we saw this hype over like COVID and people who had
oh, totally.
extra money to throw
Yes.
around were picking up extra bottles. That's where my collection
Yep.
kind of skyrocketed.
I was one of those
But there is a
people.
lot of talk about the THC infused drinks and whether that'll pull away from the regular consumer. So it is interesting that, I mean, for you, it's different reasons why you
I
shifted.
totally. The only reason I'm even doing it because is because I had to experiment with some different things to see what would work. And this is the best thing I have found. That's the most consistent thing. I know how
Mhm.
much to have, and literally, it's like I mean, most of the time I'm fine, but when I get totally wound up about stuff or whatever, and I sit up and I read and I have this, then when I go to bed, I'm like it
Yeah.
is really it's really the best I've had, like as far as an alternative,
Well, I definitely
So
feel in terms of like being a creative, the creative mind seems to always race at night, and I'm right there with you.
yeah, I
Um,
mean I mean that's just how it is. My wife knows, like that she can shut things off.
yeah,
Uh, and I am the exact opposite. And it's like, there are some of us we just need something to tune out because otherwise our brain would explode. So you can only write so much,
yeah.
you
All
know?
right, Richard. Well, cheers to that. I'm gonna have a sip, and then we're
Thank
gonna
you.
we're gonna get into some talk about you because there's a whole lot to unpack here, even before we get into Halloween Girl. So, Richard, cheers. I know
Yes,
you have your
thank
water
you.
on hand. I have some water too
Yes,
in
my
my
water's
Dallas
here.
glass.
Oh man, I can taste it now just looking at it. Oh well.
Always nice revisiting this one.
Yes, it is.
So.
Beautiful color too.
I haven't had it for a while. So if we look at your history, like the comics is more of a recent thing, like semi-recent
Yeah.
thing. You've had quite a successful career in film, television. You had outreach arts. You won an Emmy. Like, well, let's just throw that in there too.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we did. We put together outreach arts. We worked with nonprofits across the country, raise awareness about things like depression to drugs and cutting and you name it, everything, bullying. I mean,
Hmm.
school shootings. All that. I really felt from the time I was a little kid and I saw A Christmas Carol, the an animated half-hour version. Imagine that, you
Yeah.
know. But it was one of the most amazing versions of that story and it was on TV that year around Thanksgiving. We'd had our Thanksgiving dinner. My grandmother had gone to my aunt's, so I go up in her room because she lived with us,
Yeah.
and I turn on her old ancient little black and white that would have to like warm up, tiny, like. So I sat there by myself because everybody it was just kind of going their separate ways after dinner, and I'm watching. My parents were downstairs watching something else. I was mesmerized, and I thought, man, this story is amazing. I thought, oh, like I just knew it just clicked. And then seeing things later that were allegories, like the original Planet of the Apes, I went crazy over that, all the
Yeah.
Rod Serling stuff. And I was like, and then as I got older and I listened to, a huge rock and roll fan.
Hmm.
And, you'd listen to The Who do Quadrophenia, you'd listen to, Floyd's The Wall, and all that was kind of, especially Floyd's The Wall, that was my era as a teenager. And
Yeah.
so I thought, I want to reach people about stuff that that I would watch and
Yeah.
that people can use as icebreakers to get talking about stuff that are hard to
Mm.
talk about you know and so I would interview tons of kids all over the place, whether it was inner city, whether it was lower, mostly lower middle income. I'd gone to some private schools, and guess what? Everybody's got the same problem. So,
Yeah.
uh, and written a lot of pieces. So we went from doing like theater, we did live pieces, and then we went into film. And one of the things we did was our own show. It was a 10 film series filmed over 10 years, although when you watch it, I hopefully you can't tell that. Um, but called Maple Ave, and that did really well. On a lot of PBS stations across the country. We had like 4 or 5 Emmy nominations, and we won one year for a piece about suicide awareness called After I'm Gone. And so, it wasn't about being mawkish or anything. It was about basically using a different way in to talk about stuff with, and really, all I was doing was throwing back the stuff the kids were telling me. It was hard. It's hard work. It also got to me, and I had to kind of get out of that work during the pandemic. I realized it had taken a toll because it was kind of
Mm.
like artistic social work,
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
you
I
know.
come from an education background myself. I'm a teacher.
Oh, cool. Good.
And so like to be
Love that.
honest, like I wasn't the best student. Somehow I made it through and I became
Me
a teacher
too.
myself, but I always think about myself in the classroom. And I think the greatest takeaway from what you were saying is that at the end of the day, you can come up with theories and, there's a lot of like academic stuff, not to discredit some of the research and whatnot, but like the real stuff is listening to student voices. And, hearing you even talk about that, because I didn't really know enough detail in that bit. But later on, when we talk about the comic and we talk about t teens and
Hmm.
different like children being involved in the text, I'm like, this is your whole work. This is your life of listening
It is.
to
It's all the
youth.
same story. It's all the same thing. It's just different wrapping paper,
Yeah.
and I'm glad people have responded to it who didn't know anything about all the stuff that I did before. Because unless you were in education or, happened to catch it on PBS, you wouldn't know,
Hmm.
so when I saw people respond to it the way that that's what the idea was. I mean, I love horror. Don't get me wrong, because
Yeah.
it almost sounds cynical, and it's not. I love horror. I
Yeah.
love science fiction. I love fantasy. I wanted to be a children's story writer when I was really young. I wanted to do like Brothers Grimm style
Yeah.
dark.
Nice.
And I thought, oh, that doesn't work with today. But I always felt that need because I wanted to offer something that maybe I could have used more of,
Hmm.
and for me, especially as a teenager, I'd come home, go right upstairs and put on, let's just say, Quadrophenia, until dinner time and just, zone out,
Yeah.
and I really had feelings, especially I remember listening to that particular record as a teenager saying, I've got to do something like this. Like at the time, I was doing something. I'd been writing since I was 10, like
Y-
stories, and I loved to write. And I was in garage bands at the time when I was a teenager and stuff like that. But I thought, man, I want to do something that hope. I would love to hit somebody else here, like
hmm.
in the way that I have been.
Again, like as before we even get there, I'm seeing more of that through line to why this makes sense, why we got into comics. So you hit COVID, you said you were kind of like the work was even getting tough in terms of what you're doing. Obviously, that shut down a lot of things. So then
It
what
did.
led to this whole like leap where, I'm going into
Well,
comics and I'm going into horror?
I had it was an overlap because we were still doing outreach art stuff and doing I would say in the last couple of years we were really successful. And things were doing really well. I lost both my parents who I didn't have terrific relationships with, unfortunately, mostly, especially my pop. Anyway, I lost them a couple months apart from each other, and it's harder to lose, I think, parents when you didn't have a good relationship. That's been my observation because then
Hmm.
things started because the whole time, you're trying to kind of get them to see you or whatever in what you're doing or what. I was very much myself, but it was also like, and then one of these days I'll be able to
Yeah.
break through and you. So that kind of, I said to my wife Linda, but it was right after my mom passed away, and this is 2014. I said, I got to do something. We have plenty of cash on hand. Things are good, but I
Hmm.
have to do something just for myself. I mean, I've been doing contract work for years and I love it,
Yeah.
but And she said, you should. She was never an obstacle about that. She said, yeah. And I said, well, we'll form a little separate company for this, Mad Shelley Films, and we'll do, and that's what became the Halloween Girl, which was kind of rocketed out from my mother's death in particular.
Hmm.
And so I wrote that, and then I figured that was it. That did really well. We got to go to film festivals, things like that, and we were still doing outreach arts. And then we were doing this series called Under the Flowers. We did three little mini seasons of that. A
Yeah.
lot of fun. And that introduced
I
Poe, the
watched those as
Hollow,
well.
all that stuff. Totally different storyline. But then I realized I'd done as much as I could do with that. And I was wheels were really starting to fall off inside here. You know what I mean? They were
Hmm.
starting to, I was, I had a lot to work on, a lot of stuff to clean up. And then the pandemic hit. And it was like, okay, I can't make films anymore,
Yeah.
you know. And so I thought I'm definitely I'm done with that. And I said I'm gonna quietly and not tell anybody see what I can do with that original script for
Mm.
for Halloween Girl. I would love all these years I tried to get other people to get interested in it as a graphic novel series, Under the Flowers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I did it myself again on the sly, and then I realized it was working. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was just
Yeah.
like lit up because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I told my wife one night, I still think about it, like we were driving out to, to dinner or something and or going out to get something. And this was maybe right before the pandemic. I don't even remember now. But and I told her and she was like, that's awesome, and that's terrific. And I was so excited. So I wrote the first one during the pandemic. And I actually, that took me out of the pandemic, in my head. It was
Hmm.
terrific. It was such a joyous experience. Then I got to working on the second one, and then the cloud started, and that's what you have in your hand, the gods and monsters.
Okay.
Um, what I did was with that's the third book. It actually was the second book that I wrote, but it's the third in the series because we stopped and did an origin story in between. Um, and things got dark, and yeah. So I finished that. I mean, I was getting to the point where I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was writing this thing, and I it actually during the time that I was really not feeling well, not my therapist said to me, read that script out loud because I told her about it.
Yeah.
And basically I was ahead of myself, kind of like telling myself it's going to be fine. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's going to be okay. It's hell, but it's going to be fine. Everything's going to work out. And I did that. And I would read it out loud, you know, my poor wife, God bless her, And really, I don't know what I would have done. And it really helped. So it kind of like I wrote this thing and then it helped me get through. It was one of the things that helped me get through a really rough time during the pandemic when I know a lot of us were having like things were closing in and it
Yeah.
was
I'm
really
I'm
helpful. And
laughing a little bit more
that's how
just
that whole thing started. Um uh and then it was okay. I'm gonna do this. And I always loved graphic novels, though. I mean the thing that got me into it was in the '90s with Neil Gaiman's Death, High Cost of Living. I hadn't read any of the Sandman stuff, which I have now. I've read
yeah.
everything, but
Same.
that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
got me into it. Yeah,
Yeah. And I see those parallels now that you mention it in terms of like that being something that you read and kind of
oh,
I see, yeah, I see some cool parallels there. I was laughing about reading out loud because I write myself, and even just the other day, my wife's like trying to make dinner. I'm like, "Hey, listen to this," and she's just like,
exactly,
"Can we do this?" Like when we're sitting
exactly.
down later on, and but when the wheels are turning, and the
Yeah.
ideas are coming out, like I got to do it, and it really is like therapeutic for myself. But
Oh,
I
totally.
do think like when we think about COVID, it really was this kind of blessing and a curse because even though my brain has tried to like block it out like this was kind of birthed from that. Like it kind of started beforehand, but in terms of like me really passionately trying to build a
Hmm.
community around whiskey and horror of all things. But knowing that like for you, it was like you had to address a lot of like darkness and a lot of
Oh, yeah.
those that inner turmoil. But then out of that came this light of like that you finally kind of put that fire under you to be like, let's do this and let's make it happen. And thankfully you did because this work is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. And I want to give Shahid a big shout out because it would not work without him and all the artists as far as that goes. But he he brought such a um, he took a fever dream and gave it like, kind of brought it to earth and gave it, like, and you really feel the illustrations because that's just him. I mean, he
Yeah,
just really brings the heart uh, out and makes the people, you can hear their hearts beating, when you look at the pictures, the illustrations, pictures. What am I saying? The illustrations, and
yeah.
uh, and so I want to thank him again just for being such a great partner on this because it was a great team effort, you
Well, I was
know.
gonna say because I watched the the film first, and
Oh
then
gosh, that's old.
yeah, so
Yes,
like I had to do all the work and go back, and it's cool, it's out there. And I was like, well, like this informs me reading through the
right.
series. But I thought about that, yeah, in terms of like how closely you worked with Shad in terms of like now taking a script and kind of stripping it down and be like, well, what are we going to depict? Where are we going to remove words and what are we going to see like as a visual like
Yeah.
as the art we see
Well, it's
on the
great
page.
because what happens is he winds up coming up with ideas, like that I never like an
Hmm.
approach to something, and then it was like, oh, yeah. And
Yeah,
that's the case. I love collaboration. I love I never sit there and say no, 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 unless it's something that's really I feel is really really visually important to the story and we're not communicating or whatever. But no, these Shia and all the other artists who I've worked with on the series have been terrific. And again, I don't want to. It's like I hired them because I love what their work is. I'm not going to try and turn them into, you know, I want them to just run wild and do their thing.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And
And listen, you've collaborated with a bunch of people, including
sure.
Laura LaVera, who
Oh gosh, it's so funny. Yeah,
Lauren LaVera there
right,
from
right. I
Terrifier.
think we were Lauren's first film actually.
Yeah, yeah. So when I read that, I was like, how cool is that? That
Yeah,
gets a start
she's
in your
sweet.
short piece and then takes off and now is
She
at
took
every
off very
Comic-Con
quickly.
convention signing.
Yeah, yeah, Lauren. Yeah, she's doing great. She was Poe and she was the perfect Poe. And I'll never forget her audition because I was like, oh, there's no doubt. I mean, we've got 10 more people to see, but oh no.
Yeah,
She was absolutely perfect. She threw herself into it and we did the first Under the Flowers with her and then an opening because things were so busy for her. She did the opening for the second one, Circle of Hell where she transforms because I had to figure out what am I going to do. So
yeah.
she transforms into another character, Rose.
Hmm.
So which was a lot of fun to do, but we missed her. Yeah, we definitely we missed her a lot because she was really again one of the reasons I thanked her and Catherine Kuster who plays the Halloween girl in the first book. I mean, without those guys, they gave me ideas. I wanted to do a whole thing or
Yeah.
set around them at the time, but I just didn't have that
But
luxury.
like again, watching the films and going back to that, I can see
Mhm.
how they still exist in your writing. Like and even what we
Yeah,
see on the
they do.
page, like
They
having
do.
watched the films, I feel like there's still elements of them that are there. And what's
Oh
even
yeah,
crazier is like think of Lauren in like Terrifier, like when in her first role with the film, like I maybe it's because like now I've seen it, I can't unsee like elements of Poe and just kind of like,
that's
and
so
maybe that's
funny.
why she was the perfect Poe when auditioning for your film.
Oh, she was Poe. She absolutely there was no, she just it totally clicked. And yeah, it was they were a lot of work and I was, like I said, really starting to really stretch myself a little too thin. I feel like I was on the top of the ladder and I'm lucky I didn't fall off and crack my skull kind of because I
Yeah.
was pushing to do things within a very limited budget. And again we did well. We got to go around to film festivals and had a great time. And we it was for an indie thing it was very successful. It's not that it was just that I feel like I'd done all I could do there. I mean, I was only an independent filmmaker. I only have so many resources, and I felt like, well, I didn't get, and this sounds terrible. I didn't get into this to just make films. I got into this to, I'm a writer, and after a
Yeah.
while, it felt like, because I was learning all these other things because I had to, not because, oh yeah, I've always wanted to learn how to do that special effect. Not really.
Bootstrapping.
And so I kind of just wanted to get back to just writing and again, it was perfect timing. I was old and ready to, rest and just kind of say,
Yeah.
okay. And it was great to get back to it. Kind of felt like I was 10, like starting to write a story,
Yeah.
during the summer in 1974. Like, I could not stay away from writing the story, and
Yeah.
I was so happy, and that was the beginning, and that's what it feels like uh, doing the Halloween Girl. It feels like literally going back and being a little kid, and I loved. Now, granted, I only ever had one copy, you know, um, but my mom bought me a copy, believe it or not, because the cover wasn't risque, so she didn't realize what was inside, of Vampirilla, right? 'Cause it was in the supermarket, and it was issue number 18, and she's in Vampirilla's face is in this mirror,
Yeah.
you know, beautiful Einrich cover, and there's Dracula on the side, and Dracula man,
Yeah.
and I'm 8, and I'm like, yeah. So, oh, mom, can I have this? Oh, she didn't look inside, thank God, you know. And she was like, yeah, okay, because she would, everyone's buy me these things at the supermarket, and I still have intact that magazine.
That's so cool.
Well, my favorite things about Warren, as far as the artists and some of the stories, but
Mm.
were in that magazine too. I mean, it was things where you had your traditional horror stuff, but you also had things that really pushed the limits at the time. Because in the early
Yeah.
70s, everybody was like, it started to seep into the comics. You saw it in Spider-Man, for instance, all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah. A
You
lot of
started to
crossover work
see
too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but you saw a lot of issues that were happening, especially tons of stuff about drugs. As soon as the comics code kind of like relaxed and they
Hmm.
let all that stuff in,
Yeah.
and they would, talk about, and it was just, anyway, that's the wildest issue. And I would say to anybody who wants to like see what Warren was all about on the comic end,
Yeah.
just look up. You can find it probably for free. Issue number 18 of Vampirilla from 72. Freaking brilliant. I mean, really, the art, everything about it is just, that'll give you a picture of the time too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's really 1972,
Yeah.
you know?
There's it's interesting you mentioned that because like I always say that I'm a huge Shirley Jackson fan,
Yeah.
and she said like the scariest monsters are humans, right?
Oh,
And I
sure.
think like the interesting thing is even with like book three here with like gods and monsters, and again we'll never get into spoilers because you got to pick it up and read it. But a lot of like I find like through the three books is that like we can like I feel like there's a lot of greater metaphors for what's going on. Like obviously Charlotte is a ghost, someone caught between worlds and the in
Mhm.
between, which feels like deeply metaphorical and like we'll touch on that. But just like even just the idea of like it's gods and monsters, but at the end of the day, like what we're dealing with is real like human experiences. And I think
Mhm.
like why your books resonate with me so much is that I always like when it comes back to that. It's like look, we can decorate it. I love all that kind of imagery, and I love like Halloween. And this one here, in book three, if you have arachnophobia, if you're scared of if you're scared of possessed toys, okay, maybe
Yes.
Puppet Master wasn't your thing, or like
Yeah, you might want
Child's
to stay away.
Play. um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of cool stuff in that, and I had a good laugh to be honest with you because like what's that the Annabelle doll? Did you hear like in the news?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
The
exactly.
owner
Yeah.
suddenly passed. I forget his name. But he suddenly passed owning the doll. So I'm like, it's hot right now. But yeah, it adds all those things in. But really, at the end of the day, when you get to the end of the story, like it's about a human experience. And I really enjoy that aspect that we have these greater metaphors of like the gods and monsters and the and
I appreciate that.
like
Yeah, I mean
yeah.
that's what I set out to do, and I'm glad that people get that. It's so much easier to and this is not the first time anyone's ever said this, but it's so much easier to get to the heart of things in a surreal setting. You can't, where there's so many barriers up when you because I wrote realistic stuff for so many years, this
Hmm.
is, you know, and I, I mean, it was always a challenge. It was always great, but surrealism is you can talk about things in such a much more open way than
Yeah.
you can if you're going to go straight full on reality because we all go like this. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, really? Well, that's not necessarily my reality. And I think with
Yeah.
surrealism, whether it's horror, a children's story, or whatever, um, you're much more open. And I think that's what was great about the old, like Grimm's fairy tales and things like that. I think that,
Yeah.
they were dark and everybody, oh, they're really dark. Yeah, but you know why they work is because there's some really horrible parents out there.
Yeah.
Hansel and Gretel. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I mean no wonder these things still stick around because unfortunately that doesn't go away. And yeah,
It
I
makes me think of The Shining. I did one of like the first episode I ever did with Dylan of Shanky's Whip Whiskey. We were talking about The Shining. I don't know how we got on
right.
it, but anyways, he was talking about how just like the watching it from the perspective of like that's what's scary about is that's your father losing it. And I
Yeah.
always like kind of put on a pedestal. I love The Shining and the
Hmm.
both the text and the film. But when you really look at that, that's why it's scary. It's like
Yeah,
imagine like
absolutely.
you're a child and your father's kind of just seems like he's ticking a bit and he's kind of going crazy and
Yeah.
like yeah when like never mind all the imagery we see on screen those iconic pieces but yeah at the end of the day there's a child who um doesn't know what's happening to his father and his father now
I
is changing and
I think
becoming a
that's one of the reasons
monster.
it's one of my favorites too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
definitely one of my favorite films. I have not been able to make the connection with King's writing as much as I have, and yet he wrote a great book about writing, which I love. It's at the end of the day, if it's not about human beings, I mean, it's not going to stick. It might be
Yeah.
interesting and might. That's why I don't care for things that are just like made up worlds with made up this and their own made up laws and their own. It's like humans get lost in this kind of new religion essentially. It almost sounds like, well, I'm going to run away from the reality and just well, we can't.
Yeah.
And let's try and like have a good time but also let's try and I don't know, help each other through.
Hmm.
Not preach but just help each other through, lift people up. That's say I understand because I've been there, that kind of thing. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all it's about. It's just like, to me, it's just about connection. And saying, yeah, it's okay, other people out here too, we get it, we've had problems, and
Yeah.
we have felt that, and you're not alone, and let's have a laugh too. And
Yeah.
then I mean, I mean, my gosh, that was one of the greatest liberators because it was like I couldn't really make any joke. I love to joke around, I wasn't going to be making any jokes in my job. It was pretty
Yeah.
serious
Well, I
stuff.
was gonna say like there is a good balance of humor. Like I love like the playful banter and like the jokes that are dropped in there.
Yeah,
And I
it's
feel
just
like you're dealing with dark themes, but there's
yeah,
like this nice comedic relief because like what do you like, whether you want to get so deep with it, but we all need like a balance of that. But even in terms of like tense moments, some of our reactions, they'll say like people who like laugh in like tense moments or like crack a joke.
yeah,
Not only does it
yeah,
serve the
absolutely.
comic for a good moment, but it's also the human experience as well, again, right? That we kind of turn to humor.
It is, and I mean, when I was little, I used to love how I'd watch the Spider-Man cartoon from the
Yeah.
60s. They used to have it in reruns like pretty quickly, like by 1970 or whatever. And I used to watch it, and I love Spider-Man in the comics because he's a wise ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, he's there, he's about to die, and it's like, well, and so a lot of that is Spider-Man. I loved his sense of humor, and that was great about Marvel. Growing up, they had a sense of humor they were, considered, the hip comic book place. You know what I mean? Like they,
Yeah.
DC was great and all because they had Batman and whatever. I love Batman, but Marvel had a sense of humor. Especially
Mm.
Spider-Man, and that's where, to me, that's where a lot of that comes from. Like Spider-Man making jokes in the middle of nearly dying. You know what I mean?
Speaking of pulling influence, I had to ask this one. So, one of your favorite moments, there's a picture on your Instagram where you are with the cast of Halloween 3. And at first, I just thought, cool. Like, there's Richard hanging
Oh,
out with the cast of Halloween 3. But then you mentioned that it inspired the Hollow, which is a significant part of your story. So I was wondering what the connection was between like kind of like the villainous franchise characters in Halloween
yeah, that's right. Because
3.
we've been to so many Monster Mania things. I had to like stop, and of course, I've got the pictures I'm looking over my shoulder in there. Yeah, I've been to so many, and I'm such a Halloween fanatic, like, for the movies, that
Yeah.
I forget who I've met after a while. But yes, yeah, Halloween 3 did play into that. I'm glad you brought that up because I keep forgetting to acknowledge that. But Halloween 3 had um, I was disappointed when I was a kid and I went to go see it, because I was like, I wanted,
Yeah, you
uh,
want a Michael.
Michael,
Yeah.
but as the years went on or whatever, I kind of really liked the idea of this, that we're gonna destroy the world through, and so that stuck with me. I always liked
Yeah.
that storyline, and that definitely informed the Hollow. Absolutely, that without a doubt,
Okay,
that.
cool. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and then I kind of saw some of the like the ties into that. But yeah, with Halloween 3, I think it was like it's funny we all kind of have the same story because I remember like myself and like my cousin, we'd go like rent. At the time, it was like they had up till 5 or 6, so we'd rent 1 through 6, and we didn't know any better. I mean, we probably should have been watching them too. We're like maybe 10, 11. And we're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
we're watching, it's like, wait, what's happening in this one? And then you're like, 3 is garbage as a child. And then you come back
yeah.
to it later and you're like, oh, it was supposed to be an anthology. And then you kind of see the vision. And then when you treat it as its own film, you're like, oh, this is genius. This is
Yeah,
excellent.
it's a fun movie. It's a really good 80s movie, I think, like a really
Mm,
good, 80s, very very 80s, and just, but in a good way, not, because, things started to go down.
yeah.
But I do like that movie a lot. It was fun to meet those guys too. And I got to meet the guys from Halloween 2 though, as well. That was great. The
Nice.
ambulance driver, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. That was a lot of fun. But I am such a huge fan of. I don't like them all. No,
Yeah.
I kind of had. I'd be a little off if I did like them all.
Yeah.
But I saw the original. And when I was a kid, in the when it had gotten its second wind because it looked like it was going to die and it wasn't going to do anything, and then they
Hmm.
re-released it a couple months later after Halloween. So it was
Yeah.
like in early '79 that it really took off
Oh,
because
wow.
it wasn't doing any box office and like and not very good at all, even being released around Halloween. And I was like, oh damn, I didn't get to see that movie. And I wasn't even old enough to go see the movie, but we kind of got in. Um, Somebody's
Always
brother
figure out
shot
a
in
way.
the back of us, and said, "Yeah, these goobers are with me." So like took us in, and
Yeah.
it was one of the greatest movie experiences I've ever had. Like that was some of the most fun I ever
Yeah.
had, and that's one of my favorite movies, the original. And I just love the whole I just love the whole small town, you know, uh,
Hmm.
horrible evil things. That's why I like Twin Peaks. That's why I just love
Oh, yeah.
the darkness behind, the small town. And I love the fact that it's named after a town which is a couple towns away from me, Haddonfield,
Yeah.
Jersey.
Yeah.
It's Haddonfield,
Yeah.
Illinois in the movies, but that's where John Carpenter's Deborah Deborah is it Deborah Hill?
Deborah
Yeah, I
Hill.
think
Yeah.
it's
Deborah Hill.
yeah. Deborah Hill grew up in Haddonfield, New
Yeah.
Jersey. She would be a babysitter, and that's where she got a lot of the ideas for the
Okay, because
script
the
and
whole
stuff.
like, yeah, because it
So
was gonna be like what the babysitter murders.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I just love anything because I grew up in a very small town, extremely small town, which is Crystal Springs, based on Laurel Springs, where I
Okay.
grew up. Where Whitman had summer home.
Oh,
Actually,
cool.
actually,
Okay.
his home was a buddy, and he would stay there. So now it's become his home. It's not really the dude didn't have a summer home.
Yeah.
But it's a cool house, and we shot a lot of Under the Flowers inside that place.
Oh,
So
cool. Wow. That's
yeah, if you
awesome
look at
connection.
the interior stuff that looks like really old timey and stuff, that's all
Yeah.
that's all in the Whitman house. So
The so what stuck out to me was like you mentioned how like when you were writing book three, which the one we're talking about here,
mhm,
like Gods and Monsters, how it got really dark. But what's interesting when I was reading it, I felt like maybe because of the introduction of like spiders and like
mhm,
the toys and dolls, um, and some of the humor like woven in, it felt like you were kind of expanding this universe and it almost felt more playful. I don't know if playful is the right word. It's still very serious in terms of like theme and it's dark. But like, yeah, for me, I was wondering if that was like intentional where like now like the possibilities are endless in terms of like you set up your protagonist and you have that first story and then you did like issue number two that kind of goes back and explains the
mhm.
origin and the genesis of Halloween Girl. And was this meant to be like you venturing out now and kind of exploring like what else you could do with this universe?
Well, I did. Um, there's a book four that I wrote, and it was as we were coming out of the pandemic, and I was feeling a lot better. And when I had taken little stabs at it when I was going through some stuff, and then as I came out of the pandemic, I started to really pick that up again. Those notes that I made, and it's called Seasons of the Witch. And I'm kind of sitting on that book. I don't know whether. I don't want to put something out that I said, okay, well maybe I did it better already. Like maybe I talked
Yeah,
about the theme. It's not that I don't like the book, I do, but
yeah,
very, very. I don't want to ever be that guy who says, oh yeah, that's another thing. It's about the same damn thing. I don't want that.
yeah. Well, I
I even
think too
felt
as well
like
as like you obviously put care into what you're doing and you have such a great momentum going where I could see why you're trying to be pretty calculated as like what follows. I feel like book three, like where I like, my
yeah,
review that I posted online, I was like, okay, I'm ready for book four, not to put any
yeah, I really
pressure.
appreciate that.
But like I'm like, yeah, like where does this go next? So I can see how like that there's like you feel like a weight, like a responsibility of like, well, I've built up this story, I've done like the initial one, I got like kind of like the genesis of it, then book three starts kind of expanding. And then like really I feel like there's a lot of open doors where you can head with book four.
I appreciate that, and there are, and I made some stabs at doing some other things, and they wound up turning into short stories that had,
Hmm.
that were almost like that wound up not being related, but turned into some great short stories that are going to wind up, I think, and I like them a lot. They're going to wind up in a kind of a non-graphic novel, just collection of stories that Hemlock Ave,
Yeah.
um, stories with our, host Alma, who lives on Hemlock Ave, and so I've got one I'm working on now, and I've gotten the others I've written for comics, but I'm going to adapt them for the book,
Yeah.
and it'll be holiday themed, different holidays and things
Oh,
like that.
cool.
So
Yeah.
but so I'm kind of like I'm doing that now because I think since coming out of being sick and all, I feel just like a lot of people have been through this kind of stuff. You want to enjoy your
Yeah.
family, friends more, and just enjoy things and watch Walton's reruns. And so I don't know, just basically just go to Blobfest and whatever, and just I just have more fun. So I kind of feel a little guilty that I haven't pushed this book as hard as I have. But I love this book. I
Well, I
love it
mean, like
dearly.
from someone who was like kind of newly introduced to it, I will say like two of my friends, like one guy reached out right away. He sent me a picture of book number one. He's like,
Oh, okay.
saw your post, picked up book number one, like I'm jumping in. So I feel like as it grows, I feel like you have some time because I feel like even me, like I kind of powered through a lot because I knew I wanted to talk to you and I obviously want to be well versed in what I'm doing. But I think like other friends are like kind of getting into it. They picked up book one, they'll enjoy that. They'll pick up book two. So I feel like, people who are newly finding the series will spend some time with it. And that's why in this one, I wanted to touch on like that there were the films and whatnot because yeah, like they're separate, but they're very much part, I think, of like your story and like kind of seeing the evolution of characters and then how it
I'm
translates to
glad you
page.
see that because early on, people, this is very early on when I was starting, like with maybe a couple chapters and putting them out as like single issues or whatever, people were very confused. And they kept looking at the films and trying to, well, I don't get, well, and I thought, and that's one of the reasons I stopped and did the origin story and adapted the screenplay to, open it up or whatever, so
Mm.
people would know
Yeah,
where Charlotte comes from and what her whole backstory is, because I thought, yeah, I'm not really giving people a chance to, I'm taking it for granted,
yeah, because you
so
it's almost like you write her, you know her, and then you kind of have to
yeah,
flesh that
you
out, I
take it,
guess. Yeah,
you take it for granted, like yeah, and so that's why that book exists. And I'm glad it does because it was fun to open it up and do things that I couldn't afford to do, obviously, with the film. And that's my only regret about the film is that I made the film because I've been used to making educational films, and we make them a certain way really fast, do this setup, that. And as I got to make more of the Under the Flowers stuff, I thought, wish I could do it over again. For
yeah,
myself. Um, and so kind of doing the adaptation was like that. It was like, hey, I get to,
okay,
film it all over again,
yeah.
and these are the shots I would have liked, and this is what I would have liked. So that's the
Always
ultimate.
everything in your back pocket, man. Like everything, like yeah, as you've seen with writing, you never know, right? Like you never know what happens. But I had one more question before we wrap up here.
Sure.
So I know this, like you've kind of mentioned the loss of your parents. You're dealing with like your own
Yeah.
um, own life issues at the time and working through
Mhm.
grief and identity and all of that. Um, why a female protagonist?
Well, I think honestly, and I've thought about that, I think that has to do with my generation more than it does than it because I think it was easier for people who are older men to write about things that were more emotional
Hmm.
through a female protagonist um, than a male. That's not to say that it's the only way to go, because I think it honestly has to do with the time you were brought up in. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, I can talk about it if she's a female, if the
Yeah.
character's a female.
Well, I selfishly ask because like I'm writing something myself right now, and it's kind of like thriller slasher, and I have a female lead, but I say she's very much myself. Like there's a lot of elements of me
Hmm.
that I've put in there, and I kind of thought about that myself, and I'm like, well, first I was like, I enjoy like the final girl if we're looking like Laurie Strode and slashers, like
Right,
it's just woven into like horror DNA that you have like a final
right,
girl. But then I was like, well, then my second step was like, well, like, there's also things that like if a woman's going out at night, there are more fears that like they will face than like a man has to deal with, and that's just
right,
like the given truth. But then I kind of got back to like, yeah, is it because that I have a more emotionally driven character? I'm a very like emotional person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And then I kind of thought about that myself. Like, so like what you're saying makes perfect sense, but I guess I'm a bit younger and I'm still doing that where I'm like, well, now I have a layered emotional
well, see,
protagonist and I'm going female
yeah,
instead of having a
I
young
think
man in my
I
story.
mean that's I see. I don't want to. That's the thing, because I mean you're a lot younger than me, and you don't, so I could imagine. I don't know what it's like, like for your generation or whatever. I just know that for me that was the case, but apparently, it's could still be the same. I mean, it's just um, guys are just. I mean, I wrote a ton of guy characters. And all that stuff. I remember as a kid, as it being like in kindergarten, and like, it was like, okay, it's playtime, and the girls would go to this playhouse thing, and the guys would get on these wooden trucks,
Yeah.
these giant, and ram them into each. I just wanted to get
Yeah.
on the truck and ride it, coast along. I think it was really like I'm just gonna do my own thing, and it was like not gonna fall into this, like you're gonna force me into this role.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's my memory of like being aware of that. Like, this sucks. This is stupid. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And I never listened. I
I
just
always
kept
I always tell a
writing.
joke that like
What?
my mom got a call in grade 3 and they said like Michael just talks all class. I'm
Ah,
just
so did I.
like, and
It's the
here I
same
am,
way.
like just talking to people as like a side gig. But he talks all class, and the solution the teacher thought was she's like, I even moved him to the group of girls because we were seated in groups, and he talked even more. And I'm like, yeah, that's where I wanted to be.
You either fall into line or you start to think for yourself. And I mean,
Mhm.
and I think it's good. I think we both basically were like, no, this isn't on my agenda, man.
Yeah,
No,
but it's
no.
funny. That's why I thought maybe like, and I guess maybe things haven't changed so much that like then if you're writing for the masses, I naturally just started thinking of my character, who's very much me, as a female lead instead of
But
picking
see,
a
I
young
don't
guy.
think you see, I don't make it's odd because I don't make a distinction. To
Yeah,
me, it's like I don't hard to to me it's just people are people, and I think it's all just everything else is just yeah, there are these things that separate, but I don't make too much of it. To me, it's like, I just see the people at first. I don't really,
yeah,
if they're a female, fine. If they're a guy, great.
yeah,
I don't really see that doesn't stop me like, oh, what would she say? And it's like, no, it's just they're just people hanging out,
yeah,
and I mean they just have, and I don't know. It's just like you just follow your instincts. And I think if your instinct is that you want a female protagonist, then
yeah, yeah. I guess yeah,
you're
you're writing the instincts and experience first, and then you're just kind of
yeah,
like coloring in the rest. Yeah.
yeah,
Richard. So
yes.
as we wrap up here, where can people find this book or the other books if they want to jump into the
Well, they
series
can
and start
find
reading?
any of the Halloween Girl books in the Hemlock Ave graphic novel on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, on my site, rtwfilms.com, which again makes no sense anymore. Um, but really anywhere because we have a really good distribution through Ingram Spark, so
Awesome.
it's available online every place. Hell, I mean, you can order it through Walmart or Target. So,
I think
you
that's
know,
how most of us go anyway.
yeah, right. It's not like a comic shop only thing. You could order through your comic shop too, but you do have to. But most people, I think, either download. It's available on Kindle. They do that.
Yeah.
Seen a lot of people going back, like you said, which is nice to hear. Getting the first book, which has been out now for a couple, kind of getting to know the Halloween Girl through shows like this or whatever. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. But yeah, so that's pretty much anywhere. Just if you search Halloween Girl Richard Wilson, it'll pop up.
All right.
You know.
Well, like I said, I will be the first one to endorse it because
Thank you.
super enjoyable read. It was great for this to come across my table. The message inside, I love it too. If you're listening, you can't see it, but it says "To Michael, stay spooky." And I got it, the signed copy there, which is awesome.
Glad to do it. I was really honored to be on your show. So thank you, man. I
And
appreciate
yeah,
all the
thank you
kind
for
words.
taking the time to do this. So Richard, I appreciate it, man. For everyone watching, listening, let us know what you thought about the episode. Are you familiar with Halloween Girl? If not, what are you reading? What are you drinking? I enjoy hearing all that in the comment section. So Richard, thanks again for doing this.
Thank you.
Um, uh, cheers, and we'll talk again soon. I saved the last little drop just for the end there.
There you go.